Thanks, Stacy. Hi, everyone. We're so excited for today's session. We have a great guest. We have some great topics and really lots to talk about when it comes to the number one asset in every company, and that is our people and how we go about engaging them, connecting them, upskilling them in ways that drive great outcomes, not only for themselves, but for their organizations. As Stacy said, I'm Andrea Lagan. I, as Chief Operating Officer at Betterworks, have responsibility for both our customer success and our employee success. And, I have the great benefit of really seeing firsthand how our customers use and get value out of our platform. And quite honestly, the great luxury of experiencing how I and the rest of the employees at Betterworks get value out of a platform that we use every single day and how fundamental it is to our own growth as a company. And one of the customers that I have had the great benefit of getting to know is Kara Brennan Alemanno from Udemy. And Kara, why don't I let you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about, what excites you every day, about what you get to do every day and see every day, and then perhaps share a bit about Udemy's mission as a company.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Andrea. Really happy to be here today and talk about what is really what I agree with you is the most important asset of the business, which are our people. And at Udemy, we've taken a very employee-centric approach, and we've seen the results of that. Being a mission-driven company, we are in the EdTech/future of work space. And what we do is we help organizations help their employees upskill and reskill. And we do that through a marketplace of courses, tens of thousands of courses that learners get to choose from. And we have both a direct-to-consumer model where you can go on as an individual and choose a course. Everything, bread making made some headlines during the pandemic, but we have yoga courses. We have a couple of years ago, I learned how to bake a Thanksgiving turkey on Udemy. So really cool and fun. And then we go straight over into some really deep skill sets, from the technical skill sets all the way through to what we call power skills, which are those things that are really important within an organization: how to lead teams, how to communicate effectively, how to influence. So what we do externally in terms of our mission and creating possibilities for individuals and organizations around the world, we look to turn back internally. And as a high growth company in Silicon Valley, it's been a really fun journey for me. I've been here a little over 3 years, and we have quadrupled in size since then, both in terms of numbers of employees. Now we're about 1,250 employees globally, soon to be double that in the next 12 to 18 months. And when I got here, we're about 300 people. And I have spent the second half of my career in high growth companies. So the last 10 years have been in Silicon Valley, high growth, high tech companies, most recently at Planet and Pinterest. And prior to that at Context Optional, which was acquired by Adobe. So have seen this type of growth from different angles. In the first half of my career in very large enterprise public companies. So I've seen the need to get alignment and the need to make for each individual to understand, each individual employee to understand how they fit into the bigger picture of the organization, how they contribute to the mission, how they contribute to the success of the business. I've seen that need for the past 20 years. And that's something that I think we in the people leader seat have seen as a growing need, a growing requirement. And I think we're really lucky to have tools like Betterworks now, because back in my day, not to age myself, but back when I started, it was literally paper where you're writing down what your goals were and trying to check in. And there was no real easy way to make sure there was complete alignment from top and bottom and across the org, and to see the power of that alignment and the power of the engagement of the employee and the power to be able to assess and see how you're doing against these goals, as well as to assess performance against these different pieces has been really exciting for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, it's really exciting to be partnering with Udemy on, this great mission that you have as an organization. For those of you in the audience who may not be as familiar with Betterworks, we were founded in 2013. So we are closing in on our 9th year as a company. We have many hundreds of enterprise customers across the globe. We are led by our CEO, Doug Dinnerline, who is the former president of SuccessFactors. We have a very strong team of investors, including John Doerr, who I'm sure is well known to many of you. Also the best-selling author of the book Measure What Matters, which I highly recommend everybody read. Fantastic, not only for what you do every day at work, but quite honestly, for what you do every day in life. Also on our board as an observer and advisor to Betterworks is Josh Burson. Also a name that I'm sure is familiar to many of you. And what we have seen over the past few years, and I think really highlighted over the past year and a half, is that within most companies, there's a real disconnect between the people, i.e. your employees, the strategy of the company, and the results that the employees are responsible for delivering. And companies are struggling to find a way to really simply connect all three of those areas in a very continuous way. And our mission at Betterworks is to eliminate the disconnects that are, between people, strategy, and results, and close the loop between people, strategy, and results, so that, even the most sprawling and dynamic teams are able to focus productivity on really what matters most. And I think that this mission has become especially critical in today's very hybrid approach to work. So, we thank you all for being here. Logistics, for those of you who are just joining, we do have a lot to talk about today. We're going to spend some time talking about performance enablement, agility and connection, employee learning. Feel free to ask questions throughout. We also will have time at the end for Q&A. So without further ado, Kara, maybe let's take a little bit of a trip down memory lane. And, you talked a bit about how Udemy has evolved, the mission of the organization. Maybe you can share a little bit about some of the challenges that you were facing as you were contemplating a new performance enablement solution, partnering with Betterworks. Share with us what that was like, if you wouldn't mind taking a step back and reflecting to way back.
Yeah, happy to.
Early 2020, I think.
Yeah, for sure. We brought Betterworks on board about a year and a half ago. And the reason we did was because we were already on small improvements, and we wanted a more robust system that was going to work across our organization. And again, allow us to really connect the dots and have a really intuitive interface so that all of the different parts of our organization could could leverage a system to store all of our OKRs, but really have it be a living, working system that people were in and out of over the course of our quarters. And we do quarterly goal setting. And we wanted something that was in the flow of work and that could scale with us, because we knew that we have big ambitions at Udemy. We're the largest private ed tech company, but we knew that we wanted to become a sustainable business that was literally helping the world to learn. And we wanted, again, a platform that could help enable this, and a platform that we could partner with from the learning side. And this is something that we are building and we are connecting with at Udemy, working with Betterworks to identify our OKRs, to leverage it for our OKR process, to leverage it for what we call our level set process, which is our performance management cycle. We do that twice a year. And then through that cycle, we're identifying areas where people can upskill and reskill. And there's a direct connection then into Udemy's platform where people can develop a learning path. And so they have a way ahead. And the most important thing for me is the employee experience. And I'm trying to be really specific here, because I know when I hear other CHROs talk and I hear other people leaders, we can all talk in superlatives about what we should be doing for employees, but it's really the how. It's really when an employee comes to work that day, are they really understanding how what they're doing is connected to the broader goals of the organization? Are they able to articulate for themselves as well for their manager and their manager's manager and their manager's manager's manager what their performance is against that and measuring against that? And then are they able to work across the organization so everybody has a known state about how things are going? And that gets down to organizational health, which is, we all know in this time where we're trying to retain employees and make sure people feel engaged, particularly in a virtual first work environment, these are the most important things, that people literally every day understand where they sit in terms of what they need to accomplish and can see a line of sight to the bigger picture. And so we've been able to do that with Betterworks. It actually exceeded our expectations, Andrea. And I haven't shared this with you, but what we did, I think it speaks to the need that it filled, for better, for worse, in our organization. I think those of us who are in high growth organizations sometimes get pleasantly surprised when we bring in a next level tool, more sophisticated tool. But for us, what it meant was that in a time of COVID and a time of crisis, we were able to give folks a tool that made their jobs easier and help them with communication up and down and sideways in an organization. And not only did it show a good faith effort that we wanted to invest in our employees, it also allowed employees, again, to have a known state about where they sit in the organization. So what was communicated to us by our customer success person on the Betterworks team was, we had one of the fastest uptakes onboarding of the Betterworks system within our organization. I think first that speaks to the need, but it also speaks to the fact that we have anchored on being a learning organization. So we spend a lot of time with growth mindset and helping people think about being agile. And so when we're able to bring in a new tool that helps accelerate those things, help them understand again how they can be successful in their role, we were able to get a really good adoption rate there. And then we just completed a cycle with more than 90% engagement within the Betterworks platform. And that helps me sleep better at night, because what that tells me is that employees are being communicated to from across the organization as a part of our performance management cycle. We have peer reviews, we have manager reviews, and we have self-evaluation. So through a cycle, I know that everybody's talking to each other at different layers of the organization. We're uncovering additional opportunities for learning and growing. We're able to connect folks to our learning paths within the Udemy platform. And ultimately, we're able to let people know what it takes for them to be successful in our org. And we all know that that's the key to employee engagement.
Yeah, the connectedness is so key. And that was highlighted, 1,000-fold when we all went into shutdown mode and we all started working from the four walls of our own home. And maybe you can touch a little bit on, as you're contemplating the changes that you want to drive in your organization, the pandemic hits, there's the additional burden of, we all, like, nothing changed about the fact that we all as businesses still need to deliver, irrespective of where we sit.
Right. Like the world gets that there's a pandemic, but at the end of the day, the results are still what they
got to deliver.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How were those challenges emphasized for you? And, were there new challenges that came up that you didn't expect?
Yeah, of course. Right. Like, we've been living in this world of uncertainty, and guess what? We're going to hit a new normal. I talk to my team about this all the time. There is no returning back to how it was before. It's a new normal. So we continue to be in a time of uncertainty. I think having been through the last 18 plus months, we have done a lot of exercising our resilience muscles. So I think some of us are able to, we built some skills and capacity in terms of being able to navigate some of these additional changes. So I'm actually significantly more optimistic about what the next 12 to 18 months holds, because I think we're in a better position and we are ready for the upcoming changes. I think we've also understood on the people side that we have to have the tools that are going to help us succeed in a virtual first environment. So yes, we're very lucky that we were bringing in a tool like Betterworks at the time that we did. And we're continuing to look across our tech stack to say, what are other areas where we need to do better for employees and where do we need to fill those gaps? So that's going to be an ongoing initiative for us at Udemy in general, as we build the muscle for a virtual first environment. I think what was really interesting to me in terms of having a tool like Betterworks and being able to look across the technical stack were the signals that I was able to see as well with the inputs that folks were putting into the system. And we're able to see what measurement, people are measuring their progress against these goals. And we had a level of transparency that we hadn't had before. So what was really important to me on the people side is we're able to say, okay, who's not achieving their goals? Who's having some challenges? And we could do things like revisit those goals and adjust them for the evolved reality that was happening every month. Our business actually significantly accelerated during the pandemic. So the goals that we started a quarter with weren't necessarily the goals we ended up ending a quarter with. So that really tested our agility muscle. And like I said, we're able to identify areas in parts of the business where we might have been having additional challenges, and being able to go in and provide additional resources, provide additional support for teams that may be having some trouble. And to me, being able to look across the whole system and see where things are accelerating, where things are decelerating, where folks are having challenges allows me to do a better job as a people leader. And it allows folks to self-assess where they are. And again, around the communication, that we can just be more responsive holistically across the organization. And I think that's what we're going to be called on more and more as people leaders, right? This all comes back to people analytics, data insights, all these things. But fundamentally, things are moving really fast, and there's the pace of change within our organizations is greater and greater. And we have to be able to keep up with that. And we need systems that can help us do that.
Yeah. And you hired a lot of people in 2020, right? So, getting new folks hired, onboarded, feeling connected, paramount
Paramount. Yeah, we look at our employee base right now on a global scale. We're in every corner of the world. We just entered the Korean market. Japan is a huge growth market for us. And we are really excited about what's happening in EMEA. And again, and we started in earnest in the United States about 10 years ago. So again, excited about where we are. When you look at our employee base, 60 to 65%, I don't know exactly where we are this week, are new since the start of the pandemic. So are new in the last 12 months, which means we have a lot of work to do to get people up to speed and make sure that they have the tools they need to be successful. And what's interesting to me is foundationally, none of this is new on the people side of business, right? It's just the level of importance of it is newer. Mm-hmm. And so I try to look at it from a very optimistic standpoint and say, look, the foundational pieces of what it takes to be a good people leader are still the same. My core goal is to make sure that I have an engaged employee, an engaged group of employees. And what that takes is a lot of communication, a lot of understanding of what individual roles are and how they feed into the larger piece of the larger part of the organization. And it takes a lot of caring about, people's lives, right? And how they can be successful. And to me, when I'm thinking through, how can I do my job well? How can I enable my people team to do their jobs well? How can I enable every Udemy to do their job well? These are things that we've all known are really important on the people side. What's really interesting to me, and I think really important, is now we have a lot of other business leaders understanding how important these things are. These are table stakes now. My CEO is great. His number one goal is to make sure that people feel motivated and excited to be at Udemy. And that's a secret sauce that we've had, is really committed, highly motivated, very mission-driven organization, very mission-driven Udemites. Because we know if we don't deliver to folks in the areas where we are, they don't get to upskill, they don't get to reskill, they don't get to take advantage of the opportunities ahead of them. So what we do is really important. And so I think instead of getting intimidated by the changes that are out there, instead of shrinking back and saying, oh my gosh, how do I even take a next step in terms of this future of work that everyone's evolving to? It's really about sitting back and saying, what are the things that I know have always been important? And then how do I just do those better? Right? So I know that goal setting, I know that communication, I know that alignment are things that have always made people's individual work better. How do I do that with a tool and make sure that I enable myself as well as the entire organization to take away some of the noise, to take away the pieces of paper, and to instead be able to move faster in these areas? Yeah.
I heard a while back, and it really stuck with me, that you look at adversity and, like the adversities that came our way as a result of the pandemic, and, don't think about them in terms of like, that they happened to you, but like instead that they happened for you. Right. And, when you look at it from that perspective and you think about what we have learned from this experience, is that in order to deliver that, connectedness, if you will, for your employees, when they understand and can fully embrace and take in the mission of the organization, and they know how they're connected to the results of that organization, and it just, it changes the entire dynamic for the company and for every person, every human being in the company. You said something to me when we were talking a while back that just resonated as like one of the things that surprised you the most over the course of the last year with respect to what became of our working environment. I wonder if you would share that.
What surprised me?
That was the workplace extending to your room, my room, everything that's going on, and like all of that being taken into consideration as far as staying connected.
Yeah, I was talking to Kim, who's my head of global workplace, right? And I think the name is apropos. I think those of us who were looking at the evolution of facilities, real estate to workplace over the past few years, definitely felt that final transition to workplace during the pandemic. And to explain that, Kim and I were talking, I think it was probably 3 or 4 months into the pandemic. And we were like, oh my gosh, like, what is this going to look like? What is the future of offices and all the different pieces of a work environment? What does that mean? And Kim said to me, she said, Kara, here's how I feel. I feel like 3 months ago, workplace were the 5 global offices that we had. And that was my frame for what my job was, right? Was to deliver on those spaces and make sure people have really great experiences and all the different pieces of managing those 5 spaces. At this time, I think we had just crossed like 900 employees. And she said, now I have 905 workplaces. Mm-hmm. And she said, and there was a moment of overwhelm, but there was also a moment of like clarity around that and understanding like, this is what it means. It means that every single person's home office setup, home environment is now under the veil, under the umbrella of workplace. And I was like, you know what, Kim, you're exactly right. And she articulated the feeling that I'd had is like, wow, the boundaries of what we were perceiving as workplace and work day and work, which was that 9 to 5 in the office, which by the way, was never really the case. And we kind of always knew that on the people side of business, right? But we had created sort of a Maginot line around this world and said, okay, this is the part that we're responsible for. All those boundaries were broken up during the pandemic and with this shift and into a virtual environment. And I talk about virtual environment. We're still going to have hubs. Our folks are still going to be engaged in the office. We're still going to be collaborating. We are going to be getting more real estate at a global scale, but our orientation is decidedly different. Our orientation is that our responsibility are people's lives, right? And that includes, we rolled out new benefits, we rolled out mental health benefits, we rolled out financial wellness benefits, we rolled out telehealth benefits so that we could come to people where they were and we could help address all the components that help them do a great job in their work. And most important to us at Udemy is learn. Right? Learning and the ability to learn your job, to upskill in your job, to reskill in your job, to share that learning is so important. And again, we need tools that help us in this new frame. Yeah. And I think the other thing that's really important is understanding that we need to help our managers and we need to help our leaders understand this new world that we're looking at and we're living on the people side of business. And it's, at Udemy, I've seen so much growth from our managers and our leaders and being able to empathize in that broader scope of what work means. And again, coming back to Betterworks, this was an important tool for us to continue to articulate how people can frame their work in a world where the work isn't just the goal for today. The work is the goal for achieving a mission over time. And it allows employees to look beyond just this subset of OKRs that, in the past, honestly, a lot of times would be manager bestowed. Here are the quote goals, here are the tasks that you need to achieve today. Instead, I can look at my tasks, I can look at my manager's tasks, I can look at my whole organization's tasks, and ultimately I can look at what Udemy is doing to accomplish our goal in the world of creating possibilities for people everywhere. And that's much more interesting to me than just the 5 things that I have on my list of to-dos today.
Yeah. 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 It's really, I mean, when you talked about that, and 900, office spaces to manage, right? Or however many employees, like 1,100 now, whatever you're up to for any company, the effect of we no longer, even if we're a company where we're reopening offices and welcoming back people to offices, with the right protocols, et cetera, not everybody is choosing to go back. Many folks are choosing to very much take this hybrid approach, and we don't have the luxury anymore of many of us being within the same four walls, collaborating, staying aligned, making sure we're focused on the same results. We have to think in this very disconnected mode about how we keep everybody connected and understanding what the most important things are and how we're all doing in actually driving results against those most important things. The technology that you put in place, similar to what Betterworks delivers, is really paramount to, being connected in a very, very disconnected and hybrid world that isn't going to change anytime soon. We've seen huge, we've all read the reports about, the majority of organizations and companies are going to stay hybrid in their approach to work.
And this is a change that's happening so fast. I mean, remember like 6 months ago when people were still talking about our return to work day is X, our return to work day is X, and that's when everybody will be back in the office. And I think we do have to be realistic. We have lost something by not having everyone in the same physical space. And we have to regain, we have to build new skills and reskill in areas that we never imagined would be mission critical to the success of our businesses, right? We're beginning to define what those skills look like, but that's the opportunity that we have ahead, right? So it's the companies that I think realistically look at what are the things that are we've been in crisis mode for 18 months, and being able to cope and being able to manage and survive a crisis is a very different thing than being able to thrive in a new world of work. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be the companies that turn into and have an expectation of thriving. And how do you thrive? You build new skills, you reskill in key areas, and you really commit to that upskilling capability as an organization. As soon as you can get yourself as a people leader and your leaders around you understanding the amount of new knowledge and learning that has to happen to be able to thrive, the sooner you can get there, the better, because that will be the new business differentiator, full stop. Because there will be a period of time for the next 12 months, 24 months, where there's lots of companies that will not figure this out. Mm-hmm. And they will either think they can go back to the way they used to do things, or people will just accommodate like they have to date. And what we're already seeing is people are opting out of that. We have a great resignation happening, and it's happening in a lot of organizations, I believe, that aren't saying, hey, if you stay here, we're going to help you in this new future of work. We're going to help you gain the skills to be even more successful than you were before. People are very tired, as they should be. We're all tired because we have been in survival mode. But if you can reframe to now we're in a mode where you're going to be, this is an opportunity while everybody else is trying to figure it out, this is an opportunity to accelerate. Right? This is an opportunity to learn more, to take advantage, to win. That's where I think it gets exciting. And at Udemy, as I said, our business grew through the pandemic. We're very lucky to have that experience. I know that's not everybody's experience, but we have big plans for what the next looks like, and rallying people around what that next looks like, I think, is one thing. Talking about it was one thing. I think what we all know is it's about showing how we're going to do that, and leveraging things like new tools and technology from the people side of the house to say, to show people that path to success, to upskilling, and start delivering on that now so that you don't get behind the 8 ball. And that's what we're trying to do at Udemy. And what we've said is we actually want to go back to basics. We want to get real clear about what's most important. For us, most important is learning and the learning journey. And you do that by by knowing what your goals are, by getting really important, solid feedback on how to achieve those goals, and then build learning paths ahead of you that you can get excited about to grow into.
Yeah, one of our HR advisory council members in the last meeting that we had talked about what she sees as a big challenge in the future. If companies aren't intentional about this, is as companies are operating in this hybrid mode, the ability to innovate and do that, in close-knit groups is minimized. One of the things I love about the partnership actually between Betterworks and Udemy, and how the two technologies come together to align employees, on the most important strategies and driving the results, but also the upskilling, as you talked about, as people learn more and apply that to the most important things in the company, that's where innovation can thrive. Whether you're sitting in the same office or whether you're completely disconnected. And that, I think, is, paramount to, organizational growth, employee growth, is enabling through technology some of that really great innovation that can and will happen.
I get really excited. I get really excited about what the next step are. I don't want to, it has been hard. This is a really difficult time for many people. So I don't want to minimize those challenges. We still face those every day. But I feel that if we're going to do the best for our employees, it's about helping. We need to think ahead. We need to think into the, what the next 6 to 12 months looks like. And again, like what you're saying with your advisory council member, Andrea, it's really how do we create a space where all the things that people love about their jobs, the creativity, the alignment, the goal achievement, the building, the growing personally and professionally, like how do we focus on those things that are so mission critical and create them and find new pathways for employees to display those behaviors, for employees to continue to feel successful in those different areas, new pathways in this new environment that we're going to be in. And we have to think differently about it. Yeah.
There's a great question that just came in. As a company that's experiencing such growth, how are you utilizing Betterworks for cross-functional global top talent sharing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In general, I'd put this under the internal mobility category. And that's something that we're thinking deeply about, and we want to be very strategic about at Udemy. We've always had a history of letting people move both geographically as well as laterally, and then, of course, vertically within the organization as we grow and scale. But my chief learning officer, who just started, Melissa Daimler, and I have been talking about how do we reframe internal mobility from just sort of this, how do I get to the next promotion? How do I get to the next level, to a skills conversation? And that's exactly what you're talking about here. And we're in early stages of building a strategy around that. So we don't have the answer, but I can tell you with Betterworks and Udemy and what we're building together, we're going to have a lot better view into that, right? Because in one platform, we're going to have connected the feedback that an employee is receiving, the areas that an employee is excelling in, as well as areas where an area where they have strong skills, as well as areas where they want to build skills. And then we're going to have a connection to their learning paths, which are the courses that they will have curated for themselves, or that we as an organization would curate on their behalf for them to learn these new skills. and potentially refresh on skills that they've already got. So within one platform on an end-to-end experience, we're going to have the capability to put all these pieces together and then leverage those for an internal mobility strategy that's really focused on skill sets and growing skill sets, because our Udemates, as well as employees in the broader marketplace, they're smart. They get it. I know this too, right? People will care about the traditional role that you hold or the title, but that is increasingly becoming less important over time. It's more about what you did, the skills that you have, the approach that you're taking. Those are the type of things that your current and future employers want to know. So we want to make sure we're anchoring around that conversation around skills, because I do believe that's the next stage.
Yeah. All right. Well, Kara, how about, do you have any last recommendations as far as, some of the big challenges that are facing HR or people leaders now? We've got you mentioned it earlier, the challenges with an incredibly hot talent marketplace, the Great Resignation, very real issues that are facing almost every company out there. We hear about it in the news every day. Any recommendations that you would share with the audience with respect to, strategies from that perspective?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I would reiterate what we've talked about today. And I think that a really big component of what we're going to build for the future on the people side of business is really leveraging our tools and thinking very strategically about the technical tools that we use. What does our tech stack look like? How do we deliver what we deliver against a really effective and positive employee experience at scale? And, whether your scale is 50 people or 100 people, or if your scale is 10,000, it's really going to be making sure that you have consistent, positive employee experiences for everyone in that bucket. And I think what we haven't been able to do that to date, because we've only been able to solve that with manpower, right? And woman power, and on the people side of business. And that's great. I've seen the resources expand on the people side of business. I've seen us being asked for even more and more as resources expand. So I think for us as people leaders, it's turning away from us just spending more hours and more time and us being able to get infinite resources, and instead thinking very strategically and operationally about how do we scale ourselves, and how do we, now that we are at the table, now that we're being asked to do more, now that the economic environment's requiring more of us, I think the only way we will be able to deliver for an organization is by being extremely thoughtful, very strategic, and leveraging a tool set that is really sophisticated. And the good news is these tools are now out there, right? And I believe Betterworks is one of those. I believe Udemy is others. I get really excited about the broader people tech universe that's happening there. But this is a new skill set that we're having to build on the people side of business. And it's the only way we're going to be able to combat the burnout and the challenges that we will face as people leaders and as organizations going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, that sophistication that you talk about, the beauty of sophistication is when it is in its most simple form. And, going back to, one of the very first things you said at the start of this webinar is allowing things, enabling things to happen in the flow of work so that people aren't having to go out of what they're working on in order to go update a goal, go have a conversation, go give feedback to somebody. All of those things have to happen, get get further developed, take additional training, make myself smarter in a new area. All of those things have to happen simply and, in the flow of work. Otherwise, they're not going to happen. And, the technology to support that is key.
Yeah. And we're starting to talk about self-enablement. And that's employees being given the tools that they need to be successful within the larger context. And that's something that I think if you're asking about what the true future of work looks like, it's going to really be around self-enablement, because that's us believing in our employees and knowing that they have the capability to learn and be successful. But our job will be making sure that they have the communication and they have the information they need to be successful.
Yeah, that's fantastic. This has been so great, Kara. Are there any questions from the audience that I'm just scrolling through? I don't think I missed any. Are there any other questions? I know we're about 45 minutes in, but we wanted to leave a few minutes for Q&A.
Andrea, there are 2 questions in the Q&A bucket. Do you see?
Oh, there they are. Okay. All right. So the first one, what specific actions do you take to gain knowledge about and keep in touch with each of your employees about their individual goals, motivation, and needs?
Yeah, I mean, Andrea, I would open it up to you as well on this front. But we have a range of feedback mechanisms at Udemy. It always starts with the manager, and we spend a lot of time via our Udemy platform, as well as our learning team at Udemy. We have a world-class learning team, really putting the skills in the hands of our managers and our leaders to make sure that they're staying connected to their individual employees. I always start and end with the manager role. But we also have other paths. We have employee surveys. We have groups of employees that we get together and communicate to directly. All of our leaders have skip levels, and we have really strong people partners in every area of our organization that are feeding those points of information back to our chief learning officer, back to me, back to the executive staff. So we do everything we can to stay connected to employees, and we want to continue to drive that connection. We say at Udemy, feedback is fuel. And I think that's the most important thing, is to really set a culture that feedback is open, feedback is asked for and received, and that most importantly, you're making sure that people are skilled in giving and receiving feedback. And because feedback is a behavior and it's a muscle that you have to exercise.
Yeah, we say feedback is a gift. Yeah, I think, a big part of, keeping in touch with employees is aligning, between employees and managers. What are the most important things to focus on, relative to the organizational goals as well as personal development goals. But that also has to be very closely tied to regular conversations and check-ins that are happening, between managers and employees about how they're doing, in the work that they're doing, in the progress with respect to the progress that they're making with respect to their objectives. A regular feedback process, whether it's what we call anytime feedback or scheduled feedback, where there is a culture of actively giving and receiving feedback, because feedback is a gift and does help employees, managers, everybody get better at what they do. And then also taking the time to actively recognize the work that's being done across the organization with your peers, and make that known publicly. It really helps the culture thrive.
Andrea, what you're also talking about is formalizing some of these things that I think in the past we would sort of expect to happen organically. But I think, again, we have to be really intentional in virtual environments. A couple of things that we've done at Udemy is in addition to our feedback cycles that we have twice a year we have what we call career navigators conversations. And those are conversations that are not performance-based. They are intended to be open conversations that are recorded in our Betterworks platform between a manager and their employee about what they want to do from a growth perspective. And again, that growth perspective could mean I want to gain new skills. I want to look at a lateral role. I want to look at a role, a different geographic role. I want to look at a role vertically in the organization. But it's not really about that next hierarchical decision. It's more about how do I build a skill that's going to get me to the next step that's important to me from a career perspective. So I think you do have to make time and space for these things. Another thing we've done is created what we call a work from home canvas, which is a job aid for managers to leverage that just has a broad set of questions based on Maslow's hierarchy. And those questions are everything from how is your sleep going? How is your home situation from a work, are you able to work? How are your relationships doing in terms of related to your work, all the way to ultimately, like, what are the skills that you want to build in the next short term to help you have impact in the organization. And again, we have a lot of guidance around how to have those conversations, because the fact is these are the conversations people are having. So how do we help formalize that? How do we make sure that managers are prepared and have the skill sets to navigate those conversations and leverage them as a coach so that they can learn about their employees and their employees can learn how to be successful in the org?
Yeah. So much of it. I think you just answered the second question from Charmaine in the Q&A relative to the what's in it for me. Great advice there. All right, we'll do one last question from Carlo. Do you see a difference in the work at home culture depending on where you are globally? I have some thoughts on that. Kara, do you want to answer that first?
Yeah, sure. Happy to share. I mean, we're really lucky. We have folks, our founder is Turkish, and we have a large engineering presence in Turkey and have since day one. So we've been working in a global environment as a high growth company for years. And it's really enriched our organizational culture to have these perspectives. And as we've added location after location through our business growth, we have added different perspectives and different cultural norms that people are bringing to the table. So for sure, we see those differences. I think what we need to do as an organization is make sure that those differences and those needs are accounted for when we plan how we work. And this is something that we're approaching again in Q4 this year. What we're asking is each team, we've created a template of a work agreement. And we've asked that each team sit down and self-define for themselves, what do working hours look like? How do we want to engage on Slack? How do we want to leverage Betterworks? How do we want to leverage our whole tool set? And how do we help each other do our best work within the organization? And that is an agreement. That's what people need to opt into. This is not something that we can at the top of an organization say, this is how you're going to do the thing, right? And as we have different type modes of work in terms of hybrid work or remote first work, or have folks that are going to be in the office every day, we need to think about that work experience more broadly. And again, account for these different cultural needs that folks have outside and what they bring to the table within their teams. Yeah.
I agree. And I think that, whether we're living in this crazy post-pandemic world or we're still in the pandemic world, or a world like, we experienced pre-pandemic, there are norms across the globe that can and should be respected. And organizations, irrespective of where they are in the globe, still have a need to, deliver results. And the key is, whether you are an organization who is adopting hybrid or remote first, or what did you call it? Virtual
Virtual first is what we're
virtual
saying.
first.
Yeah. Even if you're in the office, or if you know somebody halfway around the world, that's a virtual engagement.
Exactly. The ability to get your people connected to your strategy and delivering results, and doing that in a way that allows employees to thrive through additional upskilling and additional learning. Those are the things that are going to help each organization deliver. And as leaders, the thing that we have to think about is, the differences in what employees' needs are. For example, if I'm an early in career person, the likelihood of me wanting to be in an office and working amongst my peers is likely much higher than if I'm much further along in my career and I've established relationships and, have those relationships to tap into. And that's where we as leaders have to be thinking about what makes our employees' development and growth best able to thrive, and our organizations best able to thrive.
What's interesting is I've found that when you ask folks, you will often find out what they need, right? And I think what we're learning more and more is having tools and creating avenues to get that feedback and to allow people to talk to each other and really get down to the nuts and bolts of how people can want to build their work days and want to reskill and upskill. If you can really find a way to engage and then be able to build that together, that's where you get to a much better place.
Yeah. Well, Kara, this has been fantastic. It's always great to connect with you and partner with you on these conversations. I would love to do more of this. I think we are at the end. I did want to just highlight for everyone who's left on the call, a warm welcome to join the Betterworks in the Loop community. It's a great community where customers and non-customers alike can join and understand the things that we're focused on as far as connecting and empowering our HR leaders and operational leaders to really drive business results. So we welcome you. There's a link, betterworks.com/community. Please join us. And we look forward to seeing you all there. And thank you all for taking the time to attend today. And Kara, thank you again. We really appreciate it.
Andrea, it was great. I love learning through these things. So thank you.
All right. You take care. All right. Bye, everybody.